Hey guys, and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks. This week, as ever, I want to try and answer a question or a comment, I guess, that I received on last week's video, which, if you haven't seen, was a rundown or run through, I guess, of the Klon KTR. The broader theme of the video being, is it worth the hype? It's obviously a little bit of a kind of, I guess, series within a series that I've started on YouTube recently. Again, the whole point of the video is not being so much to answer the question directly from my perspective or my point of view, as it is to give you a little bit of context, a little bit of background and history, and just an understanding or appreciation of the events or the situations which have led to these pedals being so revered and fetching such stupid money in the second-hand market. However, it was a phrase I used in the video which someone not so much took me to task on, just so much as picked me up on in the comment section. That phrase being transparent overdrive. Now, the reason they took me to task on it was, from their understanding or from their perspective, it is about as far away from a transparent overdrive as you can get. So they very much disagreed with my assessment. However, just to give some context as to why I refer to it as such, the Klon is a little bit of a unique pedal, I guess, in that you can actually set it pretty much so you don't know it's on. If you set the gain at its minimum setting and you set the level of unity and the tone just to match the EQ characteristics of your amp or your guitar, you can pretty much get to the point where you turn it on and nothing happens. So in the truest kind of like Webster's definition of the word transparent, that is about as transparent as a pedal will get. However, obviously when you start to bring the gain in, it brings in its own sonic footprint, I guess, to a certain extent. Less so, considerably less drastic than other pedals, undoubtedly, but it is irrefutably there. Its own kind of distinct mid-range, there's a very kind of chimey high end that you tend to get with the Klon, which again is why people love it. But obviously, I guess, in that respect, it's not transparent. My argument being, in response to that, or my response being, argument maybe a little bit strong, you would struggle to find a gain pedal whose primary function it is to introduce overdrive into, or distortion, I guess, its technical phrase, into a signal. You would struggle to find one that doesn't impart to any extent its own EQ or sonic footprint. It's going to be obviously bringing in compression in order for the clipping, but as soon as you do bring in that clipping, you are going to have inevitably, I guess, a slight loss of low end. Mids tend to be very pokey with overdrive circuits, so it's obviously kind of a very awkward thing to try and envisage a pedal which is entirely transparent. And I guess, again, at the definition, the truest definition of the word, as soon as you add an effect to a signal, it's not transparent. But I entirely get the point the guy was making, so thank you very much. As ever, thank you for all your comments. They really are much appreciated. So just, if you've got a thought or you've got an opinion, do chip in. The reason for this week's video is just to try and give, I guess, my perspective or my point of view on what a transparent overdrive pedal it is. Or is. Transparent overdrive, as I mentioned last week, is a bit of a buzz phrase, I guess, in that it's one of those kind of marketing gimmicks or marketing bump, I guess, that tend to accompany pedals to try and sell them. To try and find an accurate, definitive definition of the phrase is now impossible, primarily because I imagine it is its origins are from marketing in the first place, just to try and inspire you as to what it might bring out of your playing or as to what it might make you sound like. So in that respect, there's no such thing. However, doing a little bit of research for this video, it's obviously a phrase that evokes different responses within different people. The general theme of which being a pedal that lets the natural characteristics of your guitar and your amp shine through without imparting so much of a sonic footprint as to become an identifiable part of the signal chain. As I said, to find the overdrive pedal which does this in its truest sense is going to be a little bit of a, mountain to climb. But this week I've got a couple of pedals which I think may or may not be up to the job, just to try and give you a little bit of a kind of clearer view, I guess, of what I interpret to be a transparent overdrive, or what I don't think is a transparent overdrive, as ever with a view to just giving you the chance to, form your own informed opinion. So, some contenders. We'll do that one in a minute. First contender is the Paul Cochran Tim, around since I guess about the early 2000s. If I'm not mistaken, I think this was the first version, or at least the Tim was the first version, and then later on was downsized to the Timmy, although that may be the other way around. Basically, the Tim is the version with its own independent boost. Or not independent so much as it boosts can't use it independently. Trip over my words. I love this pedal. I've used it for a very long time, and it's become an integral part of my pedal boards and my sound, I guess. So in that respect, I love it. Whether it's transparent or not, who knows? We'll find out. Second contender being, I'm going to have to reach it, Klon KTR. That way up. Obviously, this was the pedal that sparked the whole kind of discussion in the first place, so I thought it warranted a second look, just to try and pick out maybe some key frequencies that would either define it as a transparent overdrive or not as a transparent overdrive. Third choice is a little bit of an oddball one, I guess, in that it is a dual pedal. We're going to totally disregard the right side in that it is JHS's. This is a JHS double barrel for anyone who doesn't know, but we're going to disregard the right-hand side purely for the fact that it is their take on an 808. However, the left-hand side is their version of what's a pedal called the Morning Glory, which again, depending on where you read, is apparently their take on a Marshall Bluesbreaker circuit. So when I was doing a little bit of research into transparent pedals, the Morning Glory kept popping up. So again, I've not used this pedal in a while, but we're going to see how transparent it is or how untransparent. Finally, we have the Ubiquitous Ts808. This is used often as the benchmark of the total antithesis of transparent overdrive, in that it has a very marked EQ curve and it's a very definitive sonic footprint. So, in that respect, we have this as a little bit of a benchmark to try and set the two worlds apart, I guess. So, as ever, I hope you enjoy it. Please do subscribe if you haven't already. Check me out on Instagram, Facebook. Do I do Twitter anymore? I think I still have a Twitter account, although I never use it. Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. And if you enjoyed this, please do leave a comment and let me know. Let me know ideas of things you'd like to see. And just generally, if you enjoy the videos. So, as ever, thank you for watching. I shall see you next week for another episode of Friday Fretworks. So, the first big step in actually understanding whether a pedal is inherently transparent or not is having a very firm grip on what your clean tone is, where the key frequencies lie, and how it reacts with the amp, etc, etc. So, just for reference, I'm going to give you my clean tone. I'm playing my main Highway 1 Strat into guitar rig, obviously with my signature Radioshop pickups. Sounds a little bit like this. Pretty straight ahead, kind of natural clean tone, I guess, from a Strat, which is a very nice building block to build on, funnily enough. So we're going to skip past the Tim for the time being and move on to the Klon, just to try and demonstrate what I was talking about last week, or talking about earlier rather, in regard to if you set it just right, you can pretty much get to the point where it's indiscernible as to whether it is turned on or off or not. So this is what I mean. The only thing I may be noticing there is a very, very slight bass cut, but really nothing to write home about, and you can really see why guys love it as a clean boost, because as soon as you start cranking up the gain, you do get the slightest hint of lower mids coming in. the effect of which is just a general fattening of the tone, and it does that job beautifully. But aside from that, you'd have to have incredibly good ears to really be able to discern whether the pedal was on or off then, without looking at the light. So moving back to the Tim, coming up, I guess probably about 20 years old now, so it's no spring chicken, but pretty much universally regarded as the king of the transparent overdrive. Paul Cochran, a fantastic designer, incredibly well respected within the pedal world. And when you hear this, it's no surprise why. It's a gorgeous sounding overdrive pedal I've been using for a long time. We're going to disregard the boost side today because it's not relevant, but the overdrive sounds a little bit like this. First thing you notice is it's incredibly touch responsive, and very nice or very quick to clean up as soon as you back off your pick attack, I guess, and then very quick to kind of introduce a little bit more gain when you play a little bit harder. So. For me, at least, the other very identifiable characteristic of this pedal is that it is pretty much, it holds on to every frequency very well. The bass in particular, unlike the Klon, where there was the slightest hint of bass cut, for me, the bass stays pretty much the same when you turn it on. It just introduces, obviously, a little bit of gain and compression. There's a slight high-end sizzle with it, but again, also worth mentioning that the knobs on the Tim work counterintuitively to how you may expect them. So the further left they are, the increase in those frequencies. So being set at about 1 o'clock, I guess at the moment, is the equivalent of being set just below Unity. As I said, it's a gorgeous sounding pedal, and incredibly transparent. So. Really holds on to those frequencies very well. So moving over to the Klon, obviously we've touched upon this, but I wanted to kind of start bringing a little bit of gain in to show you just the effect it has as a clean boost and why people really love it, you know, as much as they do. So if we turn it on. As with earlier, there is the slightest hint of a bass cut, but the main thing that are really kind of singing through are those lower mids. As I said, the overall effect from which are just a general fattening of the tone, which makes things sound that little bit sweeter. And just feels fantastic under the fingers. You can really see why people go for the Klon. Moving over to the double barrel. As I said earlier, we're going to totally disregard the right-hand side, which is JHS version of a Tube Screamer, and move over to the Morning Glory side, which is very much based off a Marshall Blues Breaker. We've got the gain a little bit hotter on this, but we're going to see how it sounds. From where I'm sitting, I would say that the Morning Glory actually holds on to the bass very slightly better, maybe, than the Klon. For me, though, the really kind of defining characteristic of this pedal are those kind of like higher mids that are a little bit more reminiscent of a tube screamer, I would say. Obviously, we've got the tube screamer over here to kind of show you the definition of an untransparent overdrive. But it's that kind of slight high end, kind of higher mid kick, I guess, and treble, which make this so popular. It really helps you kind of stand out above a mix. It's not one that feels so good under the fingers off the back of the Klon, but in terms of actually kind of sitting above a mix and making sure that you're heard above the drummer, the bass player, the keyboard player, the flutist and the singer. I don't know what band I'm in, Jethro Tull, I think. It's just a fantastic pedal. So there we have it. And last, but definitely not least, as I said, it's the omnipresent tube screamer, which in this case is going to serve to highlight something a little bit more drastic in its EQ curve. And the first thing you're hopefully going to notice about this is that the bass end pretty much all but disappears. Or not so much disappears, but it's vastly reduced and replaced with a very honky mid-range, which again is fantastic for standing out above a mix. So you can see why guys like them so much. Especially, you know, kind of people like Stevie Ray, you know, really kind of need to stand out above a power trio. They do a job. It sounds a little bit like this. Straight away there, I don't know if you're getting it as much as I am on the speakers, that bass end is vastly reduced, and you're left with a really kind of nice, just honky mid-range, I guess, which is very characteristic of a tube screamer. So, just to do a little bit of jamming out.